Anakin, my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy!
What if I told you that before Star Wars blew up and became part of the global pop culture, it started out as a simple yet powerful allegory about a kid from Modesto and how he viewed American politics of the late 1960s and early 1970s in what would turn out to be one of Star Wars' worst-kept secrets. So stick around, because we've got a lot to unpack as we dive deeper into the Empire, the Rebels, and us. Because this isn't the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise.
Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
This is Screenplay or Bust, your one-stop shop for all things movies, and today, come along as we discuss the hidden politics of Star Wars. Now, in previous videos we've discussed how movies in one way or another reflect the time to which they were made in, and Star Wars is no exception. If you want to learn more about that, make sure to click the tab up above. Now, let's jump right into it. Just a quick little disclaimer here. There have been a lot of implications that Star Wars has had on the political sphere, from political cartoons to policies and inclusions and comparisons. However, we're only going to focus on George Lucas and the intended meaning he meant to reflect in the original trilogy, and some select examples in the prequel trilogy. Even if you don't know much about Star Wars, the iconicism of the Empire alone carries with it a sense of notoriety. I mean, they've got Darth Vader, Emperor Palpatine, more on that in a bit, Stormtroopers, and let's not forget the abundance of cool British accents.
When ready.
But the Empire is not just one thing, and neither are the roots that it drew its inspiration from. Nazi Germany.
Nazis. I hate these guys.
The Vietnam War.
Good morning, Vietnam!
Richard Nixon.
Richard Nixon?
All have a direct line of inspiration to the Empire in Star Wars. For starters, the influence that Nazi Germany had upon the Empire can be seen both thematically and aesthetically. The thematics mostly come into play in the fact that both the Empire and Nazi Germany represent a fascist regime, which in itself can be socially complicated, but at the same time serves as a figurehead of their evil nature. This influence carries on in an aesthetic nature due to the fact that the Imperial uniforms are based on the designs manufactured by Hugo Boss, while the Stormtroopers are named after what German shock troopers were called in World War II. Although these comparisons can be uncomfortable, they're important to note where Star Wars draws its source material from, and speaks towards the vile natures of the villains, which is carried through all the way through shows like Andor, Season 1 and 2. Jumping right ahead to the Vietnam War's influence on the Empire, is less about the specific parameters of the Vietnam War, but what George Lucas defined as an imperialistic force versus the little guy. In this scenario, the roles are reversed where the US, the United States of America, is viewed as the imperialistic force, while the Vietnamese, i.e. the Viet Cong, are viewed as the little guy in the rebel force. Using the Vietnam War as a transition, we can enter into talking about Richard Nixon, whom George Lucas states as the direct influence for Emperor Palpatine and the Star Wars franchise. Up until this point, a lot of the inspiration drawn from the previous examples has mostly been conjecture and mild influences. But however, with Richard Nixon, it's a direct line of influence, and something that George Lucas has not been afraid sharing in multiple media instances. Most notably in the oral history of Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, and a behind-the-scenes book for making Return of the Jedi. Moving forward to the Rebels, we can see George Lucas once again take inspiration from the Vietnam War and the Cold War, as well as the respective counterculture that existed between the two. While George Lucas viewed the United States as the imperialistic force in the Vietnam War, he viewed the Viet Cong, or the Vietnamese, as the rebel alliance in this scenario, which Lucas represented in the movies through the asymmetric warfare that greatly mirrored the way the Viet Cong fought off the United States. When looking at the Cold War in Star Wars, George Lucas moves away from the analogy of good versus evil, and instead focuses on the attitude of fear surrounding the Cold War and the mutually assured destruction of nuclear warfare, which is greatly represented through the Rebels' fear of the Death Star. And lastly, the counterculture represented by the Rebels is something that's truly unique to Star Wars, because aside from the obvious comparison of rebelling against a pre-established culture, the way that counterculture embraces and inspired the Rebel Alliance isn't so much about how George Lucas sees the world, but how George Lucas views himself within that world. George Lucas is a rebel, and in making Star Wars, he is rebelling against what he viewed wrong in the United States and the motion picture industry. And as a result, he created one of the most endearing pop culture franchises in history. Now, we've talked about the Empire and the Rebels, but it begs the question, who is us in this scenario? I am us. You are us. We all are us. And I swear I just didn't have a stroke, but we're all us because we are all the audience members taking in these movies and adding them to our collective experience. And the thing about us is we're just as important as the Empire or Rebels are in Star Wars, because it is our collective experiences that George Lucas based Star Wars on, in both American history and global history, and it is our continuing relationship with the experiences he touches upon in Star Wars that continues to make it part of the public zeitgeist and one of the most beloved franchises of all time. So I encourage you, love the movies you love to love, but don't be afraid to think critically about them. You might be surprised how much your history has impacted it, and with Star Wars drawing so much from our collective history, and every page reflecting a little bit of the global culture that makes us one, it really goes to show you, it really is Screenplay or Bust. Thank you so much for tuning in, folks. As always, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to turn on notifications. These new videos are posted every week, but until then, take care, and
may the Force be with you.